You know, the most important part of your shot is easily the skin. That is where all your color correction, all your lighting, what you should be most concerned about is how does someone's skin look? Because it's what makes us look human. And so in this video, we're gonna be talking about that, how to color correct skin. And I have professional cinematographer and colorist Nick Pilecki here. And we're going over even how to change mist exposure, how to correct that white balance if you really mess it up in your shooting. I mean, I'm still working with professional DPs and they'll give me some shots where their white balance is off. And now you really have to correct those skin tones. So we'll break that down step by step, going over each node in this video. And this is taken from our Art of Documentary course and academy. This is just one video out of the over 400 plus videos across our 7 courses. And we take you step by step how to create a documentary, how to run a film business, and how to be a better cinematographer. And part of that is actually knowing how to color correct. And it's a skill set that we all really should have if we're ever going to be editing, because you never want to deliver something that doesn't look as good as it could. And this video is a collab with the Art of Documentary channel. So if you want more of these tutorials, we're gonna be releasing some of our course videos over on the Art of Documentary channel this summer. We'll be uploading more and more free resources. And speaking of those, down below, you can grab our free interview checklist guide. This is the step-by-step guide that we go through every time we light an interview. And I've actually seen people using that on set. They'll have it in their notebook and they'll go through each step so that they get the best interview lighting possible. So we love equipping filmmakers and helping you get not only the best footage on set, but in the case of this video, the best color and editing in post. All right, enjoy this one with Nick Pilecki. I'll tell you a little bit more about Art of Documentary at the end of this video. In this video, we're going to be going over color correcting, specifically inside Davinci Resolve. We're going to look at 3 different clips. One that has a tint issue that's affecting our skin tone, another that has some overexposure we need to fix, and then just another one where overall it's too warm. We've missed the white balance on it. So we're going to be breaking this down. We're going to be using our power grade from MBNP, but you can actually follow along and use any one of these nodes in your Resolve setup. So
it transfers over to any color workflow in Resolve.
Amazing. And if you want more in-depth coloring, guys, we do have other videos in our Cinematic Eye in Cinepath Pro courses where we go full in-depth, all the steps through color grading. But what we wanted to make sure we included in Documentary Foundations was adjusting skin tones, because if you're doing documentary, you're doing interviews, you're following a character, this is going to be something that has to be the utmost priority in your grading and in your shots. I would say the world can look a bit weird, but if your skin tones look correct, then we accept it more. It's like you don't talk to people with crazy skin tones. Yeah. You might be in a fluorescent room.
Skin tones is a weird one where it's actually the smallest thing in color. You have the threshold for deviating from what is normal. It's that in grass. You can almost accept a blue wall, a red shirt, but if the skin tone's off, the human brain's like, something's askew here, and it lives in an uncomfortable place. So above all else, when you're color grading, you should prioritize skin tones.
Amazing. So let's jump right into this. And Nick, the one thing I want to say, and I've mentioned this in our other video in Documentary Foundations, where I'm using the old Lumetri panel. I know Adobe has updated a thing to color mode now, but if you're still using Lumetri like I do when I'm in Premiere, you can go watch that video. But you'll see here on our scopes, there is this one specific line that appears or should on most vector scopes. Sometimes in your software, you have to go reveal that what sometimes is called the skin tone line, or what I call the blood line. It's essentially the actual hue, or rather saturation of blood, of what's beneath our skin. And so this is kind of your guide, your North Star, although in this case it looks like a Northwest Star, of where skin tones should lie. If you're not sure if you're kind of nailing what is normal skin tone, you can use this line. And honestly, no matter what color skin someone has, no matter how dark or white, it will generally fall along this line.
Yeah, so if you're in Resolve here and you're under your scopes, if you click on the kind of little settings button here, it might not be toggled on immediately, but there is a setting that says show skin tone indicator. And that gives you kind of this line that is a general guide for if you're unsure, or if you feel like your eyes are playing tricks on you after looking at footage for multiple hours. This is a good base to be like, is my skin tone sitting in a proper zone?
Amazing. So let's jump in here. We have this shot here from The Standard, our documentary. One thing we actually found interesting with that film, and this can happen, is we were shooting with 2 FX6s, but our second FX6, being that both those cameras now are 5 years old, its sensor actually has a bit of a difference in the way that it renders white balance. So we were finding no matter how much white balancing we were doing, we would always get a little bit of, I think it was a magenta shift in that B camera. So it's something we did have to correct in post.
And even with 2 different cameras, changing your angle will change the perception of exposure, color. So you'll notice too with really good quality LED lights, even when you look at them, some of them might have a slight color shift. So even though something says something's a setting, you can still be like, that looks too green, that looks too magenta. So training your eye in post to be like, we have to suck some of that out, we have to get rid of that, we have to add this. That's a good way to kind of like quickly correct skin tones as you're going through clips.
And this is one more little tip I learned on this project, that when you put your B camera at the perfect angle of incident as the same as your light. So if our light is at 45 degrees to our subject, and then our camera is on the other side of the subject, pointed at 45 degrees, you will always, you will generally get a really harsh reflection, and actually in many cases clip the skin tones compared to your wide shot. You'll see our wide shot from this interview compared to the side angle here before color correction. You'll see that the skin tones actually clip, or it feels like the character's face, Wesley in this instance, has much more shine and sheen on his face than he would in the wide shot. And that's just like Nick said, is when you start changing the angles, it doesn't mean that everything is going to turn out the same when you go to post-production. But let's throw our power grade on this, Nick, and let's make some decisions and ascertain what we need to change.
All right, so I've imported the MBNP power grade into our stills here, and I'm just gonna click apply grade. And
wow, very dark, very green.
Yeah, so I like the conversion. I would say it's sitting a little greeny, maybe a little contrasty, but definitely too greeny for me. And you can kind of see in your vector scope how everything's sitting more towards this green, cyan, yellow region. Everything almost feels like it's being pulled to that section of our color wheel. So the first thing I do when I'm doing skin tones or color balancing is I'm trying to go as big to small. This is a general principle for all of my color grading, but especially for skin tones, I'm not looking to go in and pull a key and change individual tones, because the more you do in the finite details, the more you're going to break your image. So I want to change the global balance of the image, then go into my secondaries, and then go into like surgical mode if something really needs to be keyed for or selected out. So what can make things easier while we're training our eyes is you can go under the windows here and you can actually draw a shape around where primarily the skin tones are.
Yeah.
And if you're not used to reading a vector scope, if you hit Shift H, it'll give you a preview of what the section of what our power window is showing.
And Nick, you can see from the vector scope here that we're getting a very tiny reading. It's fairly challenging to read that, but you can actually open up and go to 2x zoom.
If you go to your settings, you can click show 2x zoom, which if I'm doing as the overall color balance, I wouldn't say that's necessary because it might give you a false sense of how saturated your colors are. But if we're doing just skin tone,
if we're just looking at one specific area,
this will help you see where the skin's lying. So as we can see, our eye was telling us, but our vector scope is confirming it's sitting on the very greeny yellow tone. So I'm in my HDR tab, which is working on the original color space. This was shot on FX6 footage. So we're working in S-Log3, S-Cine Gamut 3. And in my global wheel, I'm gonna start to pull in the opposite direction of this greeny yellow. So I'm almost gonna start to look at my vector scope and I'm gonna try to get it close to that line while still, my preference is always to have it a little bit on the yellow side, but that's to each their own. So I'm gonna hit Shift H to come back out of our preview, and then I'm gonna go to our window and turn that off so it affects the whole image. So we're gonna Command D to go before and after. So this is out of camera, greeny yellow, and then this is just with the global correction.
And it's like the background still has that cyan look to it, but our character now, Wesley, his skin feels more human. Like right there.
Fight Club.
Yeah, exactly. Before it's very yellow, feels like bleach bypass, but this is now kind of looking somewhat more normal. Now he is someone who is very tanned, but like I was saying, I'm accepting this more as normal. Yeah.
100%. So I like that as a global correction. I'm actually going to take down our little split toning cyane node to, in our key output, let's say 20%. There's kind of two other places that I start looking at the skin tones. And this is in one called the pre-hue versus hue, or the pre-HVH node. This is working on our secondaries. And what I have either built into our power grade, or you can do this on your own, is I'm selecting for one part of the skin, which is usually this part right here. So that's kind of like 3 dots in our secondaries. And I'm saying anything that's yellow, push it towards this orange line, and anything that's skewing red, push it towards the orange line. So what it's doing is it is a built-in almost skin compressor.
Okay.
So you ever shoot on an old Canon camera where you see like red blotchiness in the skin?
Yeah,
or
always.
on old Sonys, it'd be greeny yellow.
Yeah.
This is taking those values in and around my target skin tone, which is here, and I'm almost smushing them to make this like smoother, compressed look.
And is this spike here indicating skin?
So this would be indicating the skin of where the log is, and then that's where the green is, and I'm driving that towards yellow.
Yeah.
So if we kind of reset this.
You're kind of imagining when you're actually putting the points here on this line, you're kind of trying to push, like Play-Doh into that skin tone line.
And if you look at a lot of movies, commercials, that's what they're doing, is they're kind of compressing those tones, so it almost seems like you had the best makeup artist on set, like everything's seeming very uniform, and this is a quick way of pushing your skin tones there. So if I was to build it from scratch...
Yes, I was going to say, if someone didn't have our power grade, what would they be doing?
So what I would do is I'd go in on the skin, and as my target skin tone, I would click on where I liked the skin tone the best. So from what I'm seeing, what do I like the look of the best? We'll say I like the look of here. So I'd say, let's try this as our target.
So it'll put that center point exactly where you've clicked.
Yeah. And then anything to the right of it, if you push up, it drives it to the left. So if we're looking at our vector scope here, it might be subtle, but you see anything that's yellow, if I push up, moves it towards this red line. And we'll do the equivalent to kind of the red or magenta side of things. So I have red selected here, and I'm taking this pivot point and I'm skewing everything on the red side towards this orange line. So you can definitely see it more noticeably on our vector scope there. You see how there's that red skew?
Yeah.
And the reason why I like...
You're trying to bring it all to the skin tone line, yeah.
So the reason why I like the secondaries is this is a great tool to transfer from clip to clip because it's more broad.
Yes.
It's shifting hues. Whereas if I took a key and I took out my qualifier, these never transfer between clips. Any small exposure change, color shift, you start seeing breaking, pixelation, noise. Like I only reach for the qualifier as my last chain, as like I can't suck. Maybe there's a purple light that got in there somehow.
Yeah.
But I like to keep things global because as you're coloring, especially in the doc world, you have hundreds and hundreds of clips. You want something that goes broad so that when you click to the next clip, you're like, oh, I have the confidence to know that this is going to make us go through quickly and then I'm not breaking apart my image.
And one of the tricks you've always taught me, Nick, with grading is you said a lot of people are always saying, oh, push your skin tones towards the red. You say less red, more yellow. You say generally people will look a bit better if you add just a tiny bit of yellow into it.
It's just what I've noticed with analyzing movies, commercials, doc, that if you have to err on one side of the skin tone line, slightly yellow always looks...
Just slightly. We're not saying
No,
Yeah.
Not like Fight Club, but just if you have to err on one side, it's kind of like if you treat exposure as a general rule. Someone's like, are you better to grade half a stop over middle gray or half stop under? I always think things look a little more thick and dense, just a little bit underexposed.
Yeah. Which goes against all the ETTR people. Exposed to the right.
But you can still record to the right. I'm just saying if you're landing on your grade, I'm always a fan of the ones like someone's like, are we a hair too dark? I'm like, but that is the one I know I'll prefer in a week when I've rested my eyes.
Exactly. Or when the TV's too bright and boosting all the shadows.
Yes. So this isn't to say that you can't land your skins more magenta or...
It's preference.
It's preference. I'm just saying this is a great tool to, without having to go into each individual clip, to compress the skin to your taste that transfers from clip to clip.
Now, Nick, a little bonus grading here. I feel in this shot, we are a little too crunchy on the shadow side of Wesley's face.
Sure.
just on the fly here, let's boost that up a bit.
Okay, so there's two ways I would go about doing that. You can have to go to your HDR tab, which is target for S-Log already. So in HDR, you can target, and I'd probably go to the shadows. If you click on where you think your zone is, you can click on it and preview. So I would say, yeah, or maybe dark might be a better target. Let's go with dark.
Yeah, dark is more on that deeper shadow. Yeah.
And then I would say you can, there we go. That's just ever so slightly. The reason why I like the HDR is because like we're ever so slightly digging into those shadows without it starting to feel artificial.
Yeah.
So that's going to lift this part of there. And then the other thing you can do is in your primaries, you can actually, if you think that overall it's too contrasty, you can roll back the contrast to a 0.98, I would say. And it just ever so slightly softens those highlights, brings down the contrast, and then you go up a little bit in the shadows, down a bit in the highlights. So once again, I would say subtlety is better than anything else. And then something like that just softens the image ever so slightly.
Should mention too that if you're in Adobe Premiere and this whole Resolve world is looking a bit scary, or you're in Final Cut as well, we have a whole video in our Perfect Cut course where one of our AOD members, Mark, takes us actually through, not me, another Mark, takes us through step by step how to make that transition from Adobe Premiere to Davinci Resolve. It's very interesting. He shows you kind of, if your brain is still stuck in the Adobe world, what to do when you're inside Resolve. It's great. It's a multiple part course inside the Perfect Cut that'll take you into Davinci Resolve as an Adobe user. And also, like I mentioned, we have full color grading master classes both in our Cinematic Eye and Cinepath Pro course with Nick Pilecki. But Nick, so we've done some tweaks here. We could keep going, but the idea for this video is skin tones. So let's jump to another video where we actually had very yellow skin tones. Now, right. Kim, I love shooting with Kim. She has great skin tone. So this is a scenario where my white balance is off. I put her right under a pot light in the office, and I'm obviously balanced for daylight there. So we're in a scenario where we actually have very, very warm skin tones.
So what we're going to do is still have our vector scope up. I actually think we can take down our show 2x zoom.
Yeah.
Because I think we have more than enough saturation information for us to get the variances across. So I'm going to turn that off. Same principle as before. I'm trying to see what I can do on the global level before I start going into my secondary. So Mark and I both agree, to our eye, it looks more yellow. Vector scope is also showing that. So I'm going to select.
Sometimes that's the vibe, but in this case,
it is.
Yeah, sometimes I really like a tungsten, warm skin.
Yeah.
But so, not in this case.
Usually before I'll pull back the saturation on a specific color, is what I'll do is I'll try to affect it with the white balance or global balance, because that usually gets a more natural feeling of where the skin should sit. So I'll go back to my show 2x zoom, and as we can see, it's a little kind of yellowy there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull
the global, which is everything,
and I'm going to move it kind of more blue, and then we'll come out of this. We'll see what that did for us.
A general rule I have is you can use the global wheel when you've missed the overall white balance. If there was an instance where there was just a color temperature you didn't want, but you were nailing what you would believe is your global white balance, you would kind of want to stay away from the global. The global is shifting the entire image. So in this case, it's like, yeah, I was probably shooting 56, probably should have shot 44, split the difference between that hard blue daylight and that very hard tungsten on her. But in this case, I didn't. And so we're going to want to shift the entire global white balance, because that is what I wish I would have done in camera. But like I mentioned, if there was just some sort of random pot light in the shot that was hitting one part of the image that we wanted to identify,
that's more where we go to our secondaries.
Exactly.
As we're trying to separate parts. But I would say this is a global warm wash over our skin tone.
Yes.
So we're going from...
It's looking like instantly with the power grade, when you have the rest of the power grade on, it's like instantly when you do that one global shift, it's like, yeah, that looks great. Yeah,
things almost fall into place. And then once again, people will say like, oh, you took the saturation down. It's like, no, I just rebalanced where the center of our image is. And that, I'm not saying we can't mess with the saturation further from here, but I'm trying to do the most in the biggest color space as possible before we start getting more into the details. So before I start going in to my secondaries and I'm like, pull down the saturation of the yellow, it's like, no. Let's start big and see what we can do, because the more you can stay in the global world, the more it'll transfer over to clips. So let's say we're doing a doc where Kim had 5 shots in this sequence. I now have more faith that this will transfer over to all 5 clips because I'm not doing anything that's going into like banding or clipping or anything area there. So I would say this is looking pretty good. We can go into our secondaries, do the same tricks. I would even say the saturation of our skin is still looking a little high. So I'm going to reset this node and we'll do our same trick. I'm going to zoom in with Command plus. I'm going to select an area of the skin that I like as like our target skin tone. And then we're going to do the same compression techniques. So anything that's yellow, I'm going to kind of push towards that line. And anything that's like red, magenta, I'm going to swing back over to there. So that's looking pretty good. On my vector scope, I'm going to zoom back out. And then the only thing I would say is like to taste, I would say this is still looking maybe a little too saturated.
Yeah, slightly.
So what I would do is in this pre-hue versus hue node is I'm going to go to my hue versus saturation here. And right now I have a little bit of that red taken out. So I'm going to reset this. So what the hue versus saturation is it's going to select a specific hue and it's going to start taking saturation out of just that hue. So we're going to leave the blue and the green alone. And I'm only going to take down the skin. So we're going to do something like that to me.
It's amazing how much you're pulling down and how.
And it's targeting just that color. So if we look at before and after, we're bringing really the most saturated parts of the skin, and it's sitting now more in that kind of, not bleach bypass, but probably more neutralized skin tone that we would see from more, probably more like an ARRI camera or what we'd see in theatrical releases.
So when you're making these adjustments, note too, you'll see hue versus hue, hue versus sat. The second word in that category, or the verses on the right side, that is what you're going to be adjusting. Your hue is where you're picking, and then the saturation, you're up and down. That's the level that you're working on. Because there is a few other different categories that you can make.
Oh, there's so many. There's a hue versus luminance. Yeah. So in the power grade, I have it targeted that I'm almost boosting skin tone slightly and pulling down shadows to get a little separation.
Yeah, exactly.
If you wanted to get into it, there's luminance versus sat, which I don't think I ever go for that. No. But I do use my sat versus sat every once in a while where, let's say a director, someone wants really like clean black points. I would almost say like, okay, keep this part of the skin the same. And then anything that's very low saturated, let's bring the center of it to 0 almost. So you can see in your vector scope, it's like anything that's just a little bit of color leak into it, I'm like, no, bring it back to neutral.
Yeah, amazing.
So that can be fun too.
So let's go then, moving on, Nick. We've color corrected something that was too warm. Now, this is the thing I would say is the biggest culprit of our documentary shooting. I just want to say, looking at a lot of people's interviews that they post in the Facebook group, if there's one overall thing I would say is your guys' interviews are too bright. This is a huge generalization. But most often, I'm not sure what it is, if it's the LUTs that people shoot on, but I find that the footage comes through and is a little bit too bright. I would say if you're using something like my Cine V2 LUT as your monitor LUT, know that your footage will come in a little more overexposed. But if you use that LUT as your starting point in post-production, you'll see that it comes back down. So in the case of this, I believe I did use the Sony V2. So when we drop the power grade on, it's going to be a little brighter because that Sony V2 to me always forces me to kind of protect my highlights, which is naturally how I like to shoot.
Which is good.
Yes.
This is where we can pull it back in post. So I would say before you start even looking at skin tones, your exposure will affect your skin tone, but your skin tone won't affect your exposure.
Yes.
So what I'm saying there is you want your exposure of the overall image to be sitting in a place that you're happy before you even start analyzing and critiquing the skin tones. So with this image, to my taste, I would say we're probably about a stop overexposed. And I don't even want to start thinking to the skin tones until tonally I'm like, we have our luminance values where we want them.
Because the brighter an image goes, the less saturation there will be in your skin tones. The darker an image goes, the more rich and more saturated the skin tones will be until it's like very dark and then you lose all saturation. But case in point, Nick doesn't want to start making adjustments on the skin tone until we've nailed that in.
So I'm going to go to our HDR tab, which is targeted to camera's original color space, which I believe this is a FX6.
Yep.
So we're S-Log3, S-Cine Gamut 3. So I'm going to start pulling back my global HDR, which is photometrically done in stops. So when I go minus 0.5, that means we're going down 1/2 stop as if we were on the original sensor. So it'd be as if we went down half a stop on the actual lens or put half stop of ND on. I think we could still go down to maybe 3/4 of a stop.
Wow.
And that's looking pretty good there. So if I do a before and after, which is Command D, we're going from there, kind of losing the saturation in the skin. Things are looking, I don't know, a little too bleached out or a little too white. And then you can see how the skin is almost richening up.
Yeah, it almost looks like you've added some red to the skin tone.
But all I've done is corrected my exposure because I know that your luminance values affect your perception of hue and saturation,
Yeah.
but the other way doesn't happen as evidently.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it still looks great. If I'm going to make any critique, it's like I want his face to look more like his thigh there. Like this
one
yeah,
here.
that looks really great. And I find his face is a little bit too light.
Let's see what we can do. So still going the global. I'm going to pull back my exposure a little bit then because I am trying to target that face to where we're at. So I'm going to take the note of we need to add a little bit more color there. So I'm going to almost go to our power window and take off the little luminance boost we have because I think that'll thicken it up a bit. And then I almost want to, in our hue versus hue, I think if I add a parallel node, which is Alt P, I'm going to draw a shape because this is an interview. And I'm going to target just the face. And I'm going to use this as a kind of guide to see where we can get the skin. So if you hit Shift H, I'm only targeting this part of the screen. And then we're going to blow it up. So we're working on just that. And I'm almost going to, here is where I would almost increase the saturation of this key side. So I'll do the same trick of compress it to the line we want. And then I'm gonna increase that saturation a bit. And then I might even take the luminance down so that we're getting closer to the luminance value of the thigh, because I know that things start getting a little denser. So you can see there, before kind of bleached out key side of the face, and now we're getting it closer to like that red, rich, kind of same tone across the face there. So this is just with using the tools within our pre-hue versus hue. And these really are the two tools I reach for most skin tones. It's global changes and then going into your secondaries while still working on a large, more log space. And then this is even before our Rec 709 conversion, because I know that this will transfer through all the clips in this interview rather than going into my...
Well, let's try it. Let's see. Can you now lift this and apply that to the second angle from that interview? Because I see that we have that there.
Sure.
No.
Let's grab a still. And I feel like exposure might have been a little bit different.
Yeah, this is very normal, where your two cameramen are making wildly different decisions.
So here I went down.
So you've just applied this.
Applied it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna match to where we have our shapes, and then I'm gonna play around with our global, and I'm gonna get it going as close as I can.
It's funny. I do recall this day. It was Tad and I were like, my monitor, makes things look much darker than they actually are, and his monitor makes these things look much brighter than they are. So we are having both fighting. So in turn, you're having this footage come out like this.
Oh, I like the challenge. Oh, not what I wanted. So I'm gonna go to our image wipe here, and then I'm gonna kind
of like the look on Tad's a bit more. Obviously, he's shooting on the shadow side, so there's more contrast and shape.
So I agree with that. So I would say let's focus on color tonality. I would almost say like this one looks a little more magenta.
Exactly. That sensor on the B camera had a lot more magenta.
Yeah. So let's try to take some of that out. So I'm going to go to my vector scope and I'm going to try to inject some.
Let's go to 2 times. I'm very curious to see what we see here. You can see some of the magenta even showing up there already.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull in the opposite spectrum of magenta and pull towards the green and almost the cool. Big change. So I'd say that's getting closer. Let's say we could even push that a little bit more. That's getting pretty close on the key side there. So I'm going to take it out. Actually, you know what I would do from here? Because we're so close and I'm working on a trackpad so we don't get that much control, I'm gonna go over to my white balance and I'm gonna use one of my favorite tools, the printer lights.
Nice.
So I'm gonna go to my half printer light and I'm gonna try to go down to this green cyan region. So I'm gonna add a half of cyan and I'm gonna add a half of green. So what printer lights do is they affect your exposure and color shift. So I would say that's getting pretty close on the skin tone there.
Wow.
And that's, so what I did was I added half a point of green, which pushes us in this direction, and half a point of cyan. So you can see on the vector scope, we're taking our colors and we're just moving them there. Reason why I like printer lights is it's very repeatable between clips. So
and very measurable.
Yes.
So that you're adding the exact same amount of green as you were cyan, not trying to finesse your
so the global wheel is great. But if you were to ask me, Nick, how far did you drag that wheel?
You'd be like, this much.
It's just less of a scientific thing. But I got there close with the global wheel. And then I said, we're in a world where we're sitting in more micro changes. So I want my, that's nice.
That looks way nicer with that shift you made.
And then I might even add a quarter point of magenta.
No, you can.
Or maybe take off the cyan look to match our
I know. I was going to say, it's looking a little cyan, but I kind of like it. But I prefer it without.
We'll take a beat with that. But yeah, I would say that if we look to where we were at without our HDR and our white balance shift, this is kind of where we're at in camera.
Uch Minzada.
And then this is where we ended up.
Amazing.
So
amazing work.
Pretty crazy. And then also within the HDR tab, I would say that you can go up and down a stop with 99% of cameras before you got to worry about breaking the footage. So if you're doing a 2-camera setup in a documentary and you're like, oh, they're each half a stop up from where I wanted to be, that's okay. The codecs are so good now that if we're under by half stop on one,
I'm never that worried. And they handle skin tones. It's like back in the day, the Sonys with 420 shooting on your XD cams, the yellow channel would go crazy. It's all very good.
This looks good.
Since people made it this far, we'd love to give you a little gift. If you would like to use this full setup, which is our power grade, you can use AOD20 to get 20% off our MBMP power grade. If you need a link to that, message us, or you can go over on Instagram and follow at mbnp.powergrade. You can go to our store and use code AOD20 to get 20% off your power grade. And what's great with that power grade is it comes with 90 minutes of tutorials. More than that, now Nick has added some more extras in there. It goes through all the color grading.
Keep adding as Davinci keeps adding tools.
Exactly.
You never know what we'll be used to, all of us as filmmakers. So I love coloring. I think a lot can be done in post, but even more than knowing what can be done in post, it teaches you what you can't be done in post. So it makes you a better shooter on set.
Exactly. Amazing. Thank you for watching this, guys. Keep grading. And I hope this shows you the power of resolve compared to what you can do in Adobe Premiere when it comes to color grading. Thanks for watching that one. Nick is a legend. I felt so grateful how much he's elevated my color game over the last few years. He actually teaches an entire course in Art of Documentary called Cinepath Pro, which is all about helping you actually make a full-time career as a DP. Not just about shooting good footage, because that's only part of it. It's all about the business side of networking and talking to producers and setting your rates. That is an incredible course. And it also has a feedback component where you get to interact live with Nick and have him critique your work and help you with your pre-production. We'll be opening the doors in September for Art of Documentary. It's a course and academy. We have over 9,000 filmmakers in that around the world, and we help you shoot your first film, run your business, and improve your cinematography across one of our 7 courses. So if you want to find out more about that, get our free resources, get on our email list, and stay locked to both my channel and the Art of Documentary YouTube page, because we're giving you tons more of business and filmmaking information all summer long and actually all year long. And that's just a tiny glimpse of what you'll get inside the Art of Documentary community. Thanks for watching this one. I hate goodbyes, but I love merino wool. You can wear the socks like 5 days and they never smell. That's the best part about them. It's the hack. Polyester is for losers.